David Crumb, Head of College here at Chelsea, and I've come to give you a very warm welcome to Chelsea and to our latest professorial platform. I have to do a bit of housekeeping. There are no fire alarms planned this evening, so if it does go off, you can make your way out the doors here over to Tate Britain, so that's a nice place to go if there's a fire alarm. The professorial platform series, for those of you who haven't done it before, is a chance for colleagues in the university, students, and invited members of the public to come and experience the research that we do here at UAL. And actually it's a chance for us at UAL to celebrate the great work that's going on from the team that we have here. I'm going to hand over in a moment to Kate to do a proper introduction, but I'll just say a couple of words. I started my design career here in London in the mid-1980s, and the agenda, sustainability agenda, well, it wasn't there actually. It certainly wasn't there. It was a very different world, a very different mood. And what Becky's done in that intervening period, I think shows her as a pioneer, actually. She's pioneered this subject, and the rest of the world politically has sort of caught up with her now. It's a very hot topic. So, great for us at Chelsea to do that. The other great thing is that this is a project, I think, that has come from making, has come from teaching, and a real desire to get that stuff into the curriculum, which it certainly is here at Chelsea. So a big thank you to Kate, to Becky for doing that as well. Now my chance to introduce Kate, who's going to do a full introduction.
Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. I'm very honoured to introduce Professor Becky Earley, Rebecca Earley, this evening, on the occasion of her professorial platform. We've been lucky enough to benefit from Becky's contributions to teaching and design research in the Textiles and Sustainability agenda at UAL since her appointment as Research Fellow to the Textiles Environment Design Platform in the year 2000. This was at the time of a newly established UK national academic research culture in art and design. And since then, through her extreme energy and her insights, Becky has contributed to the transformation of research in textiles and fashion sustainability to considerable effect within and outside academia. As director of UAL Textile Futures Research Centre, and more recently co-director for the Centre for Circular Design, Becky has forged exceptional links between research and taught courses. She turns presentations into visual problem-solving opportunities, inspiring and provoking dynamic models of social exchange towards new knowledge networks. Becky also delivers workshops which are best described as pure physical theatre. Driven by a desire to develop her practice to the highest level, Becky's enthusiasm for the subject extends to those around her an added confidence and impetus to explore a future created from and for interactions. Becky's deep commitment to securing connections between academic research in design and industry has seen the impact of her proof-of-concept prototype development. In doing so, Becky has fiercely protected her academic freedom to discomfort industrial partners and disrupt profitable business strategies in order to effect systemic change. She works with individuals to identify and express their core beliefs and truths. Not only has this benefited academic staff and students internationally, but also it has transformed the wider field, inspiring significant changes of mindset by her leading research projects within 2 Europe-wide cross-discipline consortium groups. She's pioneered communication bridges between practice and research, academic inquiry and industrial engagement, thematic ideas and narrative expression, and has led to a sustainable design solutions in an enduring legacy of positive change. Now, we can hear Becky express it in her own words. So please join me in celebrating her many achievements by welcoming to the platform Professor Rebecca Earley.
Thank you so much for coming. It's a real honour and a privilege to be able to share some stories with you. This year marks 20 years of making old polyester shirts. I can see one in the audience there. Thanks for wearing it. I've been making them for 20 years, which seems incredible, but of course that's not all I've been doing. I've been making them in order to understand and be able to find new models and new ways to do things for the industry. This year is also, we finished an 8-year project with Research Institute of Sweden, which has been an extraordinary journey as well. And it's just a real honour to be able to share some of those ideas with you here tonight. It is about making, and it's about what comes from making, the unique knowledge, the unique insights that come when we craft something. It's a different kind of research to other kinds of research. And as Kay was saying, we actually have to fight for this territory a little bit. If we start a big project with scientists, they literally can say to us, what are you going to do? What are you going to show us? If we haven't got the hard data there, it's very difficult sometimes to articulate what it is we can do when we make. So I hope tonight you'll get a sense of what it is we do when we make and how that has the power to change things. I come from Wiltshire. I get to do a little bit of a background here because I've got my family with me here tonight. My name Earley is actually ear meaning corn, and lay means field, so I'm actually Becky Cornfield, Wiltshire girl. My grandmother married a man whose mother was a Hancock of Marlborough, and she believes we are related to these Hancocks of Marlborough, Walter and Thomas. And Walter invented a steam engine, and Thomas invented vulcanized rubber, which I was fascinated to learn recently because that was actually the founding of the UK rubber industry. He died impoverished in Stoke Newington, so not quite sure what happened there. I have to find out more. My dad's a builder, and my favourite buildings were when he built something new, but from old bricks and with new thatch. I thought this was amazing. I didn't get to thatch any houses, but I did get to clean the bricks. By hand, with wearing gloves, sort of age 10, with a trowel chipping off the old mortar. But I thought that was amazing too. And when he unrolled the architect's plans, and I'd look on paper at what was being planned, and then month by month see these things grow, I think this seed of invention, creativity, just really took hold. But it was the women in my family that really turned me onto textiles and made a lasting impression, and still do. My mother always knitting, always sewing, even now. That's not her. That's what you get when you Google mother-daughter knitting. My gran actually made the clothes for Pelham Puppets. This is Bob Pelham, and it's a factory in Marlborough, now closed down, where they made these incredible puppets. And my grandmother would make all the clothes, and it was amazing to go in. Come in, it's fine. Yes. I used to love seeing the painted faces and the lamb's wool that they used for the hair, and these little colourful creatures come together. It was amazing. And meanwhile, I, as a child, was etching and drawing away on Etch-a-Sketch. Do you remember Etch-a-Sketch? Yeah. Well, I loved it. I would spend hours making images. But it was when I put my foot through it and broke the glass and then saw inside how the grainy sand and the sort of mechanism actually made this image that I really, really fell in love with drawing and what went behind the things that we make. I studied at my foundation year at Trowbridge Technical College, went to Loughborough for 3 years to study textiles, and then on to St Martin's for another 2 years. So 6 years learning about textiles. Best 6 years of my life still. Sorry guys. But, you know, art college, the opportunity to create all the time. Kids, take this in. This is what I want you to do. To draw, to create, to be in that state of flow, to look for ideas, to be inspired, to make things. Extraordinary opportunity. opportunities, really. I left my MA with a new technique I developed I called a heat photogram, where I took a real object and used it as a stencil and placed it against a piece of blank fabric and then made an impression on that fabric using heat. When I did it with pins, it was really successful. This was about 1995 and became my little kind of hit print. And Bjork wore it, and it was in various magazines, terribly exciting. And it predated digital printing too, so this kind of effect was sort of coming out of my studio at the time, and it didn't really, you couldn't really get the same thing from screen printing. So I had a really exciting time when I left. I set up my studio and I started making all of these sort of small collections, one-off pieces, working a lot with stylists. And I was going to do a bit of a quote, I think it's Dickens, but the best of times, the worst of times. Sort of amazing to be making this stuff, but also really hard to pay the rent. Really hard. And also what I was making couldn't be manufactured. I couldn't get somebody else to print this stuff for me. I could only do it by hand on my heat press. Couldn't send something off to the factory and get it done by the meter. So it was a really difficult business model. But I began teaching, and gradually the things have come together. It was hard to sort of find machinists and pattern cutters to sort of work for me to make the pieces that I wanted to print. And I realised, living in Brick Lane at this point, that actually I was surrounded by ready-mades. There were second-hand shops everywhere. There were warehouses full to the ceiling of old polyester shirts, literally thousands. So I began finding them, picking them, and then making these stories, making these narratives. At that time, Brick Lane, Shoreditch, you wouldn't recognise it, of course, but it was actually overgrown. So the ferns and the Burnhams everywhere, and I could actually pick what I needed to print with, and then take these shirts. They cost me 5p each. And then I could go and sell it for £150. So I had a better business model then. And then that kind of moved into some of the research I was getting into, and I would take this idea of site-specific with me down to the Eden Project and go to St Austell and find the shirts I wanted to work with in their cancer research shops, and then go back to my project, and actually they let me take the offcuts from the biomes back to London to my studio and actually print these shirts. So I was finding a different way of making work and making meaning. So rewind a little bit. To help my business model, I was teaching. At least I thought that's what I was doing, but actually I was really carving my future with my future team. But at Lime Grove, an amazing place to teach and to work, and UAL is still, some of UAL is still based there. But we had a very good time in the print room teaching these wonderful textile students. And my work sort of evolved by problem solving. So every time I sat at a desk and I worked through a project with a student, I was problem solving. So I could go back to my studio, and actually my designing got quicker and my problem solving got better. So I sort of quite quickly found a relationship between teaching 2 or 3 days a week and then working in my studio to be really, really beneficial. And Kay set up TED back in '96, and I joined this research group, and I was talking these slides through with Kate, and I said, what do I say here? Because this is years of work, and up to 50 people at one point were involved in the Textile Futures research group. A little show of hands if you've ever been part of TED or TFRC. A few of you at least. So many of us would get together because we wanted to know what to tell the students, basically, about an industry that we were finding out about. How could we inform ourselves so that we could change the curriculum, so that we could be more informed in how to choose dyes, how to choose colours, how to choose materials, and actually how to just try to reduce the impact of the textile industry. So one slide represents over 20 years, really, of my life of directing these 2 research groups with amazing people. And I wanted to say tonight, thank you for all you taught me and giving me the opportunity to lead. We've always been concerned, as soon as we knew about it, back in '95, '96, about the impacts coming from fashion and textiles. We've always been trying to find solutions. This slide sort of sums it up quite neatly. It's from the Sustainable Fashion Academy in Sweden, who are friends and colleagues of ours. And we are one of the most impactful industries in the world. And I'm not going to do statistics tonight, but I am going to look at ideas and solutions and how we can connect the different solutions coming out. Because we're buying more stuff still, more and more all the time, and actually the UK is not very good. The UK has the highest per capita consumption of fast fashion out all of Europe. So we need to be doing something about it. We could have done something great last week when we put to Parliament a 1 pence tax, 1 pence on each garment to be imposed, and it got rejected. We are fighting a huge industry with little inclination to really change. But there are changes coming and there are changes happening. And I want you to not be disheartened and not think that this is mission impossible, but actually look at some of the amazing innovation that's coming through. The circular economy, circular design, is about changing linear into circular. The model that we evolved in the Industrial Revolution onwards of take something, raw material, make it, waste it, put it in the bin, or maybe a second-hand shop bag, or maybe to a friend, but it doesn't go very far. We don't get our things to go around in circles yet. We don't get them to last long enough. We take, we make, we waste. Sophie might be in the audience tonight, but the Great Recovery back in 2014 in a project led by Sophie Thomas began to look at how we could design better, how we could move away from this linear system and think about designing for longevity, for service, for reuse, remanufacturing, and for material recovery, actually being able to recycle the material parts. And to be presented with this was really inspiring because it actually, we have been textile designers working with recycling, but it really kind of made us understand that the whole industry, all industries, furniture, architecture, needed to think in loops and not in lines. But textiles and clothing and fashion is actually very complicated because unlike furniture, perhaps, there are many more component parts, many more complex blends, many more materials that we're putting together, finishing with things and treating, so that we have big, big challenges ahead for making our textiles recyclable. This is a study from the Mies to Future Fashion project, which is looking at all the different research that's going on at the moment to try to map which materials need to go into which kinds of recycling or repurposing or reprocessing systems. It's phenomenally complex. And I think because of that, we wanted to really focus our energies. And so we moved from being TED and TFRC, and we set up in 2017 Centre for Circular Design. My co-director, Kate Goldsworthy, and I had the opportunity to refocus the group on the circular economy and circular design for textiles, but also for all design, to find the models that were transferable, to find the things that came out of making textiles that are useful for other design disciplines, and actually to bring some of that together. This is the team. I always show a picture of the team, and so much of what I show tonight is a team effort. I have got the opportunity to do a talk which is about my shirts for once, I think, but so much of the sort of modelling and the final results comes about through intense conversations and workshops and supervisions and co-creating things. So thank you to all of you on that slide for your ongoing collaboration. We define what we're doing through 3 lenses: materials, models and mindsets. We want to work with looking at how we're using materials and how they need to be used in the future, the social models and the models that those materials flow and fit within, and the self and the mindset, the user, the people involved in this circular economy. Because once the circular economy started being talked about, it became evident early on that unless people were involved in bringing things back and taking things to the right place and consuming in the right way, we weren't going to have circles. And design doesn't usually start with thinking about what somebody's going to do at the end of the life of the product. It just starts with the brief, and it starts with the aesthetics, and it starts with the moment. The design brief is not generally about circularity. So we're challenging this, and we're making new models for fashion and textiles and design that come about through looking at design differently in a much more interconnected way. In 2005, we got an Arts and Humanities Research Council grant for a project called Rethinking Recycled Textiles. And we began to work as a staff team of about 10 of us on trying to understand how designers could bring the added value to low-value waste materials. How could we make something of very little economic value much more valuable and re-enter the system with some economic drive behind it? And we looked at new technologies, systems and service design, long life and short life, ethical production. And we had a way of bringing those together to create new briefs for ourselves. It was a really exciting time because we were really challenging ourselves as a group of researchers and staff to think differently. Excuse me. People like my shirts and then steal them off me, or I give them away, or maybe I make them pay. But I don't make them for sale or for wholesale. But I did go back and ask people what it was they liked about their shirt, and did they still wear them. And lots of people said the same thing. It's the hand of the maker. You can see the hand of the maker, and you can't see that in commercial products. And I suppose with what I'm making, it's got a craft edge to it, but it's also got a fashion eye to it. And I'm choosing kind of bright coloured polyesters, and then I'm looking at the cut. But you can also see my hands, and you can see my thinking process. And I think it ends up making something that just wasn't there before. Sometimes the process is really quick. This is a 20-second per side print, but it's the choice of the old, crinkly, scratchy nylon lace shirt that I found in Nottingham, and how I pair that, I think, with the old Marks and Spencer's quite soft blouse, and how those two cuts fit together, and then how I choose the colour. I suppose how I then put it on somebody and show how it could be. And it's really, it's about the designer being able to put things together and create new value and new meaning through that creative process. And in that, then you can see new production potential, but you can see how we can use something like polyester time and time again. It can have a longer life than it's currently having. I was also interested in, same trip to Nottingham, how old lace could become jewellery. And I collaborated with Dr. Frances Geeson on this project, where she silver electroplated lace, and it sort of became detachable elements on the shirt. So the textile sort of enters a different waste stream, a sort of industrial symbiosis occurs, and it goes off to a jewellery stream. And then is there a technique then that could strip that away and bring back that material to a textile stream? I wanted to see how these kind of disciplines could interact. But I think it was when Kate and I worked on Twice Upcycled that we really began to see the potential of forward planning these lives. So we start with this lace shirt. We're going to see this a bit later in the flesh. And it gets overprinted here using black paper and thistles. And that's its first upcycled life. And then we imagine that the consumer that's got this upcycled funky shirt tires of it, because people do tire of their clothes. They do that look, it passes. They actually want something else. So we're imagining that that user then passes that shirt back to the label, us, and Kate used laser etching here to make a lace pattern inside and over the top of this first print. So we're then putting the shirt back out there, and it's different, something else has happened to it. And in this case, we actually made a kind of a quilted waistcoat with laser welding, where the new layer of material, recycled polyester, is placed against the shirt. And and etched and welded together with a laser and made a sort of heavier weight piece. So we're sort of imagining what could keep happening, and what could keep happening in a way that adds a higher price too. What can you charge slightly more for? How do you change that cut? How do you change the weight? So out of that project, that AHRC project, and all the work that we were doing in TED's 10 erupted onto the scene in 2010, really. We came up with these 10 ideas. We were able to say, these are the things you can do. These will make your design process more sustainable. You'll be able to work in a greener way. We used to use the word green or eco back then. And they kind of did go out there, almost pre-social media, and seemed to sort of find places, and then people would phone up and say, can you send us a pack? Or can you come in? And we started to go into businesses and help them. And what we realised is that with the 10, we have this interactive pack we could shuffle, and we could say to the company, okay, look, you're already doing really good work with dyes, so let's push that forward as your main card. And then, look, you've got to look at that factory and that production. That's not good enough. You're going to have to bring that in second and work on that. And we sort of had this way of helping companies see that they could change, but almost bit by bit. At H&M, that was a real learning curve, and actually they just said, no, design, we can only do 1 to 5. We can't do 6 to 10, because that's in China, and that's the production office. It's a completely different part of the business. Can't do that. So we sort of learned what would and wouldn't work that way. And I think that was great, but that was also frustrating to sort of come up against the things you can't change. So we came back to London and we said, right, well, those ideas that can't be explored there, we can explore them, and we can find out, in this case, can the user cycle for themselves? What do we need to do to help people take garments from their wardrobe and give them a second life? They're going to need some help and some instructions, so I made online films to then help people do this at home with an iron, so they don't need to access specialist equipment. And then I took the shirts to Hong Kong with the Redress project and looked at how we could use the shirt as a teaching tool, as a way to bring together this group of entrepreneurs. They were all setting up their own fashion businesses and wanted to learn more about sustainability. And we made a shirt together. We took it apart. Everybody printed their pieces separately, and then we put the shirt back together. And it just represented this, we need to come together. We can do so much, but we need to come together. And also then in China, I worked with, in Shanghai, we went to a factory, and we took the shirts to the factory, and we took our lives, literally in boxes, and showed them our lives, and they came and shared their lives with us. And we co-created textiles there too. So we wanted to go and find out more about working conditions and this kind of relationship, really inspired by the H&M experience, where the Swedish designers are incredibly enlightened, but their production office in China has a different set of decisions and a different set of people working, and it's very difficult for those worlds to meet. So in this shirt, I kind of made the worlds meet. I literally got an H&M sundress that became the lining of this jacket, and then an old polyester crepe sort of shirt from a Shanghai market, which was in a box on the floor, really dirty, and cost about 5p again. And I thought, these are almost the cheapest, least valuable things I can find, and now I'm going to give them the greatest value I can. And so I hand painted for 3 weeks this design onto paper of Swedish historical textile details and Chinese, and I made the Swedish and Chinese worlds come together through my painting. And then Karen Spurgeon embroidered that, and we just put it into a museum. It went on show, and then the papers are framed, and I just thought, I'm going to take the cheapest thing and make it the longest life, most expensive thing, to add new value to this situation. All of this is, it happens by either taking the pack of cards or the box of our lives, or I realised that what we were doing was creating these experiences, these moments between people that changed them and changed us a little bit. And that to change this industry, to take on new collaborations, to make new partnerships, there's quite a lot of us we need to change, and there's quite a lot of sort of reserves we need to draw upon. And I began to sort of look at how we can find that way to work together, find the sort of meeting places. There's quite a bit of work now that we're doing in where we come together to meet, to work, and how we come together to the same level. So we used yoga as an experiment in this project. And in this one with scientists from the Trash to Cash project, actually here at Chelsea, we got them to meditate together and then in silence look at each other and draw each other. And we made this shirt together. And it was quite extraordinary because this happened in the middle of a 2-day busy sort of workshop where we're talking a lot of technical information, a lot of different ideas and statistics are being exchanged. And this was a moment to really look at each other because this very big consortium had to come up with prototypes that had to be co-created. That was the remit we had for this 3.5-year project. And, you know, sometimes you look around the room and you think, this is not happening. You know, the Swedes are over there, the Finns are over there, sorry guys, but that was what we were like. We were just in our own little corners and no one was sort of trusting each other, believing in each other's different approaches, and beginning that co-creation process. So, Silence shirt was a kind of a levelling moment where we all, I think there is actually research that if you can stare at somebody in silence for a while, love occurs. And in these interviews I did afterwards with them, they were like, there was a little love between us in the room afterwards. I was so delighted that I had that quote because something happened and we actually went on to make work together from the groups, from the sort of teams that were set up here. But I think the learning, this experiential process and the need for this to be about education and changing the mindset and preparing ourselves to think and act differently in the future. Maybe want to go back then to primary school and look at what you guys were doing, not wanting to get things back out of lost property because it was dirty, and how it was so much easier for the parents to click and buy something online from Tesco's than it was to maybe repair and sew a button back on. So we asked, who made my uniform? And this was with Fashion Revolution, when that was set up after the factory disaster. And we found out that the kids' school uniform travelled thousands of miles to get to us. And the school cap travelled the furthest, it came from Vietnam. This was a real eye-opener for the kids and for the parents and the staff. And then we looked at what materials were and where they came from. And then we made a shirt, we made a school shirt. And these are all about finding different ways to understand materials and our material future and what we've got in store. This was the most fun, when we managed to paintball and skateboard over old school shirts. And I think for those kids that I managed to take, this is at the Well Gallery in LCC, that I managed to take to this gallery, it was, radical. This was great. This was upcycling, and this was incredibly fun. Really messy. And, God, this is, we need this. We need the fun. We need the fun in this circular world we're trying to build, because if it's not enjoyable, no one's going to come on this ride with us. So in Trash to Cash, that was the sort of mindset I kept coming back after the 2-day trips every 2 months and going, I've got to make this fun. It was really hard. This project was about making regenerated fibres from waste through different scientific processes, and it was all about DDMI, design-driven material innovation. We were funded to put design at the front end of the scientific investigation. So we were working with scientists from Sweden and Finland and Italy and Slovenia, and we had to tell them what we wanted from a new fibre. So as they go through the regeneration process, they can do different things. They can add chemicals, they can take things away, they can change it. And we had to work with them to say, do you know what? People just don't want that, or that feels nasty. And we had to sort of get in at the front end of the process, instead of at the end, when actually what happens now is that these new things are made and then they're handed to us. as designers, and someone says, make something with that, and we kind of go, all right then. You know, so this is about, DDMI is about going, no, let's get the creativity in at the beginning, and let's get our sort of tacit knowledge and our knowledge of the market and our knowledge of people in there to actually determine what might happen. So it was a real negotiation process. This is the negotiation process. I won't talk about this diagram too much, other than you can see really how the interdisciplinary space where we were mixing our disciplines changed shapes and size, and how design tasks run through as do the R&D experiments. And we designed a way to work together. And we came up with 6 prototypes, one of which was this shirt, which is made from old blue cotton, waste cotton that's blue, and we found a way to retain the colour. Textiles, when you recycle them, you generally bleach them back to white, to optic white. You have to, because that's the industry standard. And we were like, why? Can't we just keep the colour there and work with a grey? We can work with a grey, let's work with it. You know, so we were kind of having these conversations, and this is coming from Aalto University, this technology. And we made this shirt. What happens when you take cotton, you put it into a chemical sort of dissolution process, and then you can extrude something called lyocell, which is a viscous, but it's a really good quality sort of fibre, so it feels, it's getting very close to cotton. So we made a blue shirt out of lyocell, and we made it 0 waste in pattern pieces, so there's absolutely no cutting waste from this man's shirt. And we built a business model around it, that this man with this blue shirt, made from regenerated blue cotton, would have a service that overprinted it, overdyed it for him over a period of time. So it would go different shades of blue until it's a very dark blue at the end. So that was a shirt I didn't make, but I was really part of the team making it. And at the same time, I was making the work in the Latour project, which I'm getting to. But I can't do tonight's talk without taking a moment to think about polyester, because all my work has been with polyester for 20 years, and the conversation around polyester is changing all the time, massively. We're finding out more and more. We made a material that is cheap, durable, light, but we're now finding out that it sheds and that oil reserves are being depleted. And so we need to think really carefully about how we use it. So for the booklet, it's a whole other lecture I'm not going to do now, but I will do. I asked 20 experts what they had to say about the future of polyester. So I'm going to give you the summary very quickly. And it's actually really similar to the plastics debate, the single-use plastics debate, if you've been listening to any of those and tuning into Radio 4, they're doing a lot of it at the moment. We have to shift our value system from cheap. We're using a brilliant material, but for cheap things. And that's really its biggest problem to start off with. How do we use this durable, long-life, high-functional fibre in better ways? Because we use it for cheap, fast fashion. The oil going into this sector is actually tiny, but everyone really wants to find alternatives to using fossil fuels, quite rightly. We need to work on the collection systems and how we process it, of course, keep it perpetually in use. If we're going to use it, and we are, it's never going to go away, we're going to have to use it better and find the systems to keep it in perpetual use. We can add virgin back into regenerated processes to keep the quality there, to build the quality back up. That's really important. And we can make polyester from biopolymers, so we can make it from plant stock. We can make it. We don't have to make it from oil, although that has huge limitations too. And we do have to think about, thank you, Charles, whether or not we grow food or we grow crops for textiles in the future, because there is going to be a big trade-off there for meeting our textile needs if we're going to rely on cotton crops, of course, but also the new bio crops that are coming through. And the thing that I found most striking about the microfibrillation in the sea is actually that the harm comes from the chemicals that cling to the fibres. And there are millions of fibres, millions and billions and trillions of fibres that come from cellulosics too. All kinds of materials shed. And of the 5 different chemicals that are damaging, 2 come from cotton. So what's happening is the fibres are getting into our food systems, getting into our coral, and it's the chemicals clinging to those fibres that are causing the damage. So it's a really tricky conversation. We need to have a really detailed conversation. And I sort of say in my little booklet, we can't take sides and just decide until we've really looked. So our work with the Mistra project in Sweden has been about really looking, and not really looking through one pair of glasses from one angle, but from many. So we've been working over 8 years with material scientists, life cycle assessment experts, user behaviour experts, policy experts, there's a whole gang of us that regularly come together, share findings, and then make new processes happen together. At the end of the first 4 years, we did an exhibition, and Kate took a look at the exhibition, and we realised that we had made recyclable fashion textile products, but they all had different speeds. They were going from the very fast and sort of reclaimable, renewable materials through to the very, very slow repaired and archive pieces. And we thought that this fast and slow spectrum was really interesting, that it would allow us to look at not just circularity and circular design, but look at appropriate speeds too. And the driver behind this is, by and large, you might have heard of extending the life of clothes, long life fashion, we need to buy more classic, we need to be more durable, which we do. But we also need to rethink fast, because people want change, they want to look different, they want different colours, they want different things in their wardrobe moving in and out, they have different body sizes. We actually need change, and we need to design change better. So this idea of fast, we decided really needed looking at again. This is online, so it's another lecture in itself, but Circular Design Speeds is online, it's the end of the project, so do go there. And we basically made a super fast product with Kay and Kate, and we made super, super slow. I'm going to show you my super slow work in a minute, but we also made work with industry, so we worked inside a brand and helped them make a super fast recycled product and a super slow recycled product. Part of our research and in working in these teams with these multidisciplinary actors around the table was to understand more about what the approaches were for designing fast, how we could do fast better. And this paper jacket, I think, is my favourite work that Kay made, where she's looking to make something that looks and feels like a suede jacket, but is actually made from compostable paper, so naturally dyed, can be put in the garden. But maybe there are these moments where we need these clothes, but not for very long. And then we looked at what's needed for slow as well, the different systems, the different material approaches, and how we can treat the garment to last time and time again. So the service shirt, I started out with the idea that it could be 200 years, because that's how long polyester stays on the planet, or, as my workshop participants told me, that's impossible, no one can design for 200 years, we can't even think beyond this season. They kind of would take my workshop tools and scribble on them with Sharpies, and in the end we all decided that 50 years was feasible, that we could go for 50 years. So I've made a shirt that changes over time and then goes back into the material regeneration loop. And it started with the user. I spent time with a typical sort of Philippa K consumer and her daughters, and I looked at how they used their wardrobes and how the product could flow through the relationships and the friendship groups. And then I looked also at fashion libraries and how we are, they're kind of beginning to emerge around the place, and how these products, if they're slow, they can go between single use and sharing contexts. And how could we move this material around over a 50-year period? I knew that I could overprint it. I knew that by building up layers of pattern, the shirt could take on a different look over the years. But I didn't know what aesthetic that would be, an aesthetic that would last 50 years. We worked closely with life cycle assessment experts to find out what savings were going to be made, and actually to try to make our design decisions based on knowledge around where the savings were best sort of brought in. So you start out by making the best possible shirt, for this project, a recycled polyester silk-like material, zero waste pattern cutting. And actually, interestingly, from the MISTRA project, one of the big breakthrough finds, I think, that we were only there last week presenting the final results, is they're kind of saying, actually, it doesn't matter about the materials sometimes, it matters about the supply chain. It's not, we get asked all the time, what's the best material, what's the most sustainable material? It's the supply chain. Where has it been grown, where has it been manufactured, who's sewing it, who's dyeing it, and what are all of their processes? Because you can have a really great cotton, really green cotton, and a really crap one. And the crap one is probably the worst thing on the planet to be using. But no one knows that. So the first overprint goes on around 8 years. And then over the top, a second print goes on. You can just about see the other print peeping through. You're going to see these shirts in just a minute. And then a black goes on top, but it's not a flat black. It's a kind of textured black because its previous life peeps through. And then it's been designed to fit inside a jacket. So the jacket's been cut to the same shape as the shirt. And the shirt gets cut down the centre front and becomes the lining for a jacket. And this is my PhD researcher, Letitia, who isn't here because she's at Glastonbury, developed this textile lock system. So this can be removed. These are tiny laser cut slits and these fabric locks that go in, and it locks the lining into place so that temporarily this is its new life for the next few years. But you'll also notice the etching pattern in there too. And this is because what we really learned from this project was how to design from the end backwards. If you're going to design things to last, if you're going to design things for circularity, you start with the end and you trace everything backwards, and all your design decisions work backwards. So what she did with the laser cutting was, the laser etching, was predetermined for our jewellery maker, Catherine Wardropper, how she was going to cut that jacket and line it up later, and it would be made into jewellery. So you're really predetermining this sort of series of lives for the garment. And at the end, at 50 years, it goes into textile regeneration. This technique that the MISTRA Future Fashion researchers came up with is called blend rewind, and it's another way of separating different material types, polyester and cotton in this case. And the great thing we realised is that we're designing long life products with 50-year cycles. They've got 50 years to make this right. If we can design the products now, knowing where they're going to go, knowing much more about the technology, this is why we have to work with scientists. We need to know what technology is being developed, and we need to design for it. We can keep things in loops, and at the right time, it can go to the right recycling system. And we need to design for users. So we began to sort of understand that we have to design products to move in and out of people's wardrobes, and to really invest in the sharing economy. We need fashion libraries. It's the single thing that will make the biggest difference. And the arrows here are what really matters. Because that's a move between people, and that's a move from people's wardrobes. How do you get these things out of people's wardrobes? How do we change this mindset so we're happy to have things for a while, and then we let them flow? So, we're getting to the end. And I wanted to look at what we can share around how we look at what we've created. How we can look deeply at what we've created and look at every single thing. In active network theory, what you do is you look at everything in the system and understand it, and understand its effect on something else. And so everything from bacteria, yes materials, yes production and supply chain, yes the people involved consuming, but also where and what building and what road you got there on. You really have to look deeply and find these systems and these networks to really see the insights that are there. So we took the service shirt through this process and found that we had these maps. We could draw these maps where not just the good is the shirt is moving around, but the people are too, and the technology changes, and sometimes the technology is not even there yet, and we have to go somewhere else. And we begin to build this really rich map. And then we realised we had a whole range of new people that we hadn't really looked at before, that we hadn't even, in some cases, knew that they were there. So it's very complicated, but I'm going to just very quickly show you some of these new people. Probably my favourite is the idea of fashion philanthropist. The first person that buys the 50-year shirt is investing in our futures, in all of our futures. They need to know at point of sale that by making that purchase of that garment, they're sending it on a journey. They're investing in sustainable fashion, they're investing in good use of materials. And like collecting art, that's something that they want to do. We have the fashion sharers. We do know a bit about them. They are an emerging sort of early uptake group that are prepared to swap and rent and change and share things. But they're also maybe the people who might go into getting things remade slightly too. Are they getting the embroidered Nike shoe, or are they getting the repaired jeans? They are prepared to enact something in the system to change the products that they have. And the fashion renters, so the people that are happy to have a wardrobe that's flexible and fluid. And then we have these designers. We have remanufactured craftspeople like Catherine, and the remanufacturing designers like Latour that know how to make things that come apart, that are going to go on these other journeys. We have in-store advisors, a whole new range of jobs for our graduates to take their textile skills and be based inside a store or a brand, advising on this remanufacturing process. Embedded academic designers like we've been at Philippa K, going in and spending time with the teams and exchanging and sharing our knowledge and building, finding new ways to do things. And remanufactured design engineers is Miriam's work there, where the designer is prepared to go into a scientific lab and challenge the way that things are being done and observe and learn that technology, learn that chemistry and make changes. And these spaces, whether it's the design science lab that Miriam needs to work with the scientists, the customization spaces for the users to go and get their things changed, the in-store fashion libraries, big one. Why are we not able to go and borrow stuff from stores and it to be as sexy and nice as making the purchase? Independent fashion libraries, another one, but a different group of people using that kind of library. And user remake spaces, like the kind of work that Bridget Harvey's doing. She's not here, I don't know where she is. She does repair and mending, and actually what she does is bring in everybody from the community to mend things for themselves. So people, processes, places. By looking through actor network theory, I was able to unearth all of these different roles and then roll them forward into what they mean for design. And these kind of ideas we can then take forward into the curriculum and into new projects, new research projects. So Kate and I are on the point of sort of publishing this stuff now, but we know that design needs, circular design needs a new manifesto. We need to design things differently, and our materials, models and mindsets have been used to frame 4 ways that we can design for the circular economies of the future. Whether it's with waste streams, for recycling, using design-driven material innovation processes, and designing to enable collaboration, communication and systems. So you remember this. These are the solutions. These are not being enacted by us. They're being enacted by NGOs, by charities, by policymakers. These are some of the solutions that are coming online. And we're beginning, this is where we really are at this moment, literally today. But being able to see that what design can do is link these solutions, have an impact in some places, but really what it's doing is helping us to agitate, to have agency. And we need to make these connections, to bring these people to work together on these complex, wicked problems, and we think a circle is a really good shape to do that within. This is finally, I just wanted to sort of come to the end, really say 2 things, and this is the first of my last slides, but from the Meet the Future Fashion project, from all these years of working together, we've had amazing relationships with the scientists, the environmental scientists in particular, and We've been able to talk all the time, to and fro, about design ideas, how people act, this piece of research, and sort of bring this rich story together. And they've just, as of last week, brought out their kind of manifesto, which I think is really worth looking at. They're saying today, in Sweden, the average Swede buys 50 pieces, and they'd like to see that by 2030 come down by 10% to 45 pieces. That doesn't seem too much, does it? It wouldn't affect the economy too much. If they can do that, and then they're going to do these other things incrementally too. You need to think about how you drive to buy clothes. That actually has up to 3% impact on the garment that you're buying. Cutting waste, you know, I was talking about zero waste cutting. That's really important. Making things last 10% longer. Changing our supply of electricity, water, relying on renewables much more. Changing our dyeing methods. There's something called dirt dyeing, which will have a really big impact in the synthetics industry. And Sandra Roos, who came up with this work, is looking at being able to reduce the footprint by 50% of Swedish fashion. And it's a result of bringing all the knowledge together to make this incremental jigsaw come together to make a manifesto change. 50% would be amazing. And none of those things seem impossible. Philippa Kay produced, after 2 years of us working as designers in residence, 2 new pieces, this collection of long life raincoats were made from polyester. And when we started, they were just about to ban using polyester. And then we asked them to design something to last 50 years. And they realised that they had to use polyester. But they shouldn't wash it. They should get the best polyester possible. They should colour it in the best possible way. They should, etc. It went on the market, and it went straight into the V&A Fashion Archive too, which is great. And they also made a short life garment. This dress is compostable. Beautiful, one-off moment that can fade away in the compost heap after your hangover is cleared. This is the effect of us working the Mistra project, to be able to go into companies and to make them change the way that they're doing things. And there are only 2 new garments, but there's a world of thinking around that we can now go forward and share. And this is my last slide. It's about being those makers, going into those situations that we were allowed through the doors of H&M, that we were allowed through the doors of Philippa Kay. We spent 2 years at each of those companies because we can turn up with materials, because we're designers, because we talk their language, and we can help them see the change in material form. And making research, what we call practice research, is so important to the changes and the challenges that lie ahead. And University of the Arts London is full of amazing design researchers, design students, that can take their power out into the world and begin to change and begin to design the kind of world that we all do want to live in the future.
Finally, end by collectively saying thank you for an inspirational hour, actually, and a real lesson in what design can do, actually. It takes its self-responsibility, it finds the right partners. So a very big thank you to Becky. I'd like you to join us over in the banqueting suite, where we can celebrate what we've just seen and talk about all the things we've just learned and meet some new friends. So,